Who is this man?
I'm her godfather.
Well, aren't you resourceful?
Come with me.
Some movies don't fail right away. They pull you in. The opening feels confident, powerful, like you're about to watch something special. You lean forward. You think, okay, this could be great. And then, slowly, almost quietly, it starts slipping. The magic fades. And by the end, you're left wondering how something that started this strong ended up that empty. Today, we're talking about those films. Movies that opened with momentum, but somehow lost their way before the finish line. Number 10, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. There's a moment at the very beginning of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny where you almost let your guard down. For a few minutes, it feels like the movie gets it. The pacing is sharp, the energy is there, and Indy is back doing what Indy does best, outsmarting Nazis, cracking whips, and surviving chaos by pure grit and charm. That opening sequence is confident enough to make you believe this might finally be the proper farewell the character deserves. The de-aged Indiana Jones racing through World War II Europe is fun in a nostalgic way. It's fast, practical, and intentionally echoes the classic adventures fans grew up with. Harrison Ford's presence alone does a lot of heavy lifting here. Even digitally altered, his charisma still carries weight, and for a brief window, the movie feels alive. But once the story jumps forward, that momentum quietly disappears. The film trades pulpy adventure for a time travel-heavy plot that feels oddly detached from what made Indiana Jones special in the first place. Instead of clever puzzles and grounded mythological mystery, the story drifts into overcomplicated territory that never fully justifies itself. Worse, the emotional core feels thin. This is meant to be a send-off, yet Indy often feels like a passenger in his own story. The themes of aging and legacy are introduced but never explored deeply enough to resonate. What should have been reflective and meaningful ends up feeling distant and sluggish. By the time the credits roll, you're left thinking the same thing many fans did. The opening promised an adventure rooted in the past, but the rest of the film proves that's exactly where Indiana Jones should have stayed. Number 9. Hancock. Hancock starts with a genuinely interesting idea. What if a superhero was powerful, invincible, and completely unbearable? From the very first act, the movie leans into this concept with confidence. Hancock is reckless, drunk, destructive, and deeply disliked by the public. And that contrast alone feels refreshing in a genre that usually glorifies its heroes. The early portion of the movie is surprisingly sharp. Watching Hancock attempt to fix his public image with the help of a PR specialist is funny, self-aware, and oddly grounded. The destruction has consequences. The humor lands. Will Smith's performance carries a mix of sarcasm and vulnerability that makes the character compelling despite his flaws. For a while, it feels like the movie is building toward a clever deconstruction of superhero mythology, long before that became popular. You can see the potential clearly, a story about responsibility, self-control, and how power doesn't automatically make someone heroic. Then the movie takes a hard turn. Instead of developing its core idea, that completely changes the tone. The grounded satire gives way to melodrama, immortality lore, and emotional beats that feel rushed and unearned. What's frustrating isn't that the movie tries something different, it's that it abandons what was already working. The second half feels like a different film entirely, one far more serious and far less interesting. By the end, the humor is gone, and the originality that made the opening stand out is nowhere to be found. Number 8. Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. The opening of Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets is almost hypnotic. A wordless montage shows humanity's first contact with alien life, evolving over centuries into a peaceful, interstellar alliance. It's emotional, visually stunning, and filled with wonder. For a moment, it feels like you're watching the birth of a modern sci-fi classic. That introduction alone sells the idea of a massive, living universe, one built on curiosity, cooperation, and imagination. The scope is ambitious, and visually, the film never stops trying to impress. Alien species, environments, and technology flood the screen in a way that feels genuinely creative. But once the story actually begins, the cracks show quickly. Despite the fascinating world, the characters feel oddly hollow. Valerian and Laureline are positioned as charismatic leads, yet their chemistry never quite clicks. Dialogue often feels stiff, and emotional moments fail to land because the film prioritizes spectacle over personality. What should have been a compelling mystery buried inside a living space city becomes predictable and cluttered. The narrative leans heavily on exposition, while character motivation and growth take a back seat. You're constantly being shown incredible things, but rarely given a reason to care about them. In the end, Valerian becomes a movie defined by what it could have been. The world building is rich, the visuals are bold, and the opening promises something special. But without strong characters or a focused story, all that imagination floats by without leaving a lasting impact. Number 7. Predators. Predators waste no time grabbing your attention. The film opens with a man free-falling through the sky, hitting the ground hard, and immediately realizing he's being hunted. No exposition, no explanation, just pure confusion and danger. It's the kind of opening that makes you sit up and think, all right, this could be good. As more characters are introduced, mercenaries, killers, soldiers from different parts of the world, the setup feels intentionally mysterious. None of them know why they're there, only that they've been selected. That sense of dread and isolation is exactly what a Predator movie should lean into. On paper, the concept is strong enough to carry an entire film. Adrian Brody's Royce is positioned as a reluctant leader, and while he's not a traditional action hero, that actually works at first. His quiet intensity fits the survival tone, and the jungle setting recalls the original film in a way that feels respectful rather than lazy. But the longer the movie goes on, the clearer it becomes that the mystery isn't going anywhere interesting. The questions raised early on, why these people were chosen, what makes them special, are answered in the most basic way possible. The revelations don't deepen the story or the characters, they just exist to move the plot forward. Instead of expanding the mythology, Predators plays things safe. The characters remain thin, their backstories barely explored, and the emotional stakes never rise beyond surface-level survival. By the final act, the film feels less like a bold evolution of the franchise and more like a remix of ideas we've already seen done better. It's not a terrible movie, but it is a disappointing one. The opening promises a tense, psychological hunt. What we get instead is a serviceable action film that never justifies its strong beginning. Number 6. Watchmen. Few superhero films open as confidently as Watchmen. The movie begins with a brutal, grounded murder that immediately signals this isn't a story about clean heroes or easy morality. That scene flows into an unforgettable opening credits sequence, stylized, symbolic, and packed with historical imagery that reframes superheroes as deeply political figures. In just a few minutes, the film establishes its world. A grim, alternate history where masked vigilantes didn't save society. They complicated it. The tone is bleak, the themes are heavy, and the ambition is obvious. For fans of the graphic novel, it feels like the movie understands the surface of what makes the story powerful. But as the film unfolds, that ambition starts working against it. Rather than distilling the core ideas, Watchmen tries to include almost everything. Subplots stack on top of subplots, pacing slows, and emotional beats get buried under sheer density. Even with an extended runtime, the story never feels focused. One of the biggest issues is tone. The movie visually glorifies violence with slow-motion action and stylized fight choreography, which clashes with the source material's critique of superhero brutality. Instead of questioning power, the film often seems impressed by it. Characters suffer as a result. Some are compelling in concept but underdeveloped in execution. Their philosophies are stated, but rarely explored in a way that feels human or grounded. By the time the story reaches its climax, the emotional payoff doesn't match the weight of the ideas being presented. Watchmen doesn't fail because it lacks effort. It fails because it mistakes complexity for clarity. The opening promises a sharp deconstruction. What follows is a visually striking but emotionally distant adaptation that never quite finds its balance. Number 5. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen sounds unbeatable. Iconic literary characters, a Victorian-era setting, and a world-threatening conflict. It practically sells itself. Early on, the film leans into that promise with confidence. Each character gets a flashy introduction, and Sean Connery's Alan Quatermain brings authority and old-school gravitas that briefly makes the team-up feel special. For a moment, it seems like the movie is building toward a classic adventure rooted in myth, personality, and heroic legacy. Then the wheels come off. Once the team is assembled, hopping from set piece to set piece without a strong narrative spine. Character interactions are rushed, conflicts feel shallow, and the group never truly comes together in a meaningful way. The biggest disappointment is how underused the premise is. These are meant to be extraordinary figures, yet they rarely feel distinct or memorable. The film starts with literary magic, but ends as a loud, hollow spectacle that proves a great idea isn't enough on its own. Number 4. Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice opens with a perspective shift that feels genuinely inspired. Instead of replaying superhero destruction as spectacle, the film reframes the chaos of Man of Steel through Bruce Wayne's eyes. We see fear, confusion, and collateral damage from ground level. For a moment, the movie feels thoughtful, almost daring. It asks an interesting question: what happens when godlike power exists without accountability? That setup gives the conflict between Batman and Superman real emotional weight. Bruce's anger feels earned. His paranoia feels human. The film positions their clash not just as a physical fight, but as a philosophical one. Fear versus faith, control versus hope. But then the movie collapses under its own seriousness. Instead of developing that moral tension, the story becomes cluttered and incoherent. Subplots pile up with little connective tissue, and the narrative jumps between ideas without letting any of them breathe. What should feel epic starts to feel exhausting. The tone is another issue. The film is relentlessly grim, rarely allowing moments of levity or humanity to balance the darkness. Characters speak in heavy-handed dialogue that explains themes instead of exploring them. Even emotional beats feel muted under the weight of constant despair. By the time the movie reaches its climax, the original question, should Superman be trusted, has been buried beneath spectacle, confusion, and forced plot turns. The infamous resolution only highlights how rushed and undercooked the conflict truly was. Batman v Superman begins with a sharp, intelligent hook. But instead of sharpening that idea, it drowns it. What could have been a defining superhero drama ends up as a bleak, unfocused film that mistakes seriousness for depth. Number 3. Wonder Woman 1984. The opening moments of Wonder Woman 1984 remind you why audiences fell in love with Diana in the first place. The film starts with color, movement, and optimism, traits that instantly set it apart from its darker DC counterparts. Early action sequences feel playful and heroic, showing Wonder Woman as both powerful and compassionate. For a while, the movie leans into a hopeful, almost nostalgic tone. It wants to be brighter, lighter, and more emotionally sincere. On paper, that's a smart direction. Diana works best as a symbol of truth and kindness, not just strength. But as the story unfolds, cracks appear quickly. The plot becomes overloaded with characters, wishes, and rules that never fully make sense. Instead of focusing on Diana's internal conflict, the movie gets distracted by convoluted mechanics and side arcs that dilute the main story. The emotional core, centered on loss and desire, is introduced but poorly handled. One particular storyline raises uncomfortable implications that the film never meaningfully addresses. What should have been thoughtful feels careless instead. Tonally, the movie struggles to stay consistent. It jumps between lighthearted fun and melodrama without a smooth transition, making it hard to stay emotionally invested. By the final act, the stakes feel abstract, and the resolution relies more on speeches than earned character growth. Wonder Woman 1984 starts with warmth and promise, but its unfocused storytelling and shallow execution turn what should have been an empowering sequel into a confused, forgettable follow-up. Number 2. Jurassic World Dominion. Jurassic World Dominion opens with an idea fans had been waiting years to see. Dinosaurs are no longer contained. They're loose in the modern world, forcing humanity to coexist with creatures that were never meant to return. The early scenes tease chaos, ethical questions, and a genuine shift in the franchise's direction. For about 20 minutes, the movie delivers on that promise. You start imagining a story about responsibility, balance, and survival in a world fundamentally changed. It feels like the natural evolution of the series. Then the film abruptly loses focus. Instead of exploring dinosaurs integrated into society, the plot pivots toward a global threat that has almost nothing to do with them. The dinosaurs, supposedly the heart of the franchise, become background noise in their own movie. The story grows bloated, juggling too many characters without giving any of them meaningful arcs. Returning legacy characters are present, but rarely impactful. Their inclusion feels nostalgic rather than purposeful, as if checking a box instead of advancing the narrative. The pacing drags, the stakes feel oddly disconnected, and the central theme, just because we can, doesn't mean we should, is repeated without deeper exploration. No amount of visual spectacle can compensate for how little the movie actually says. Jurassic World Dominion doesn't fail because it lacks ideas. It fails because it abandons its best one almost immediately, leaving behind a bloated film that never lives up to its groundbreaking premise. Number 1. X-Men Origins Wolverine. X-Men Origins Wolverine is easily one of the most frustrating entries on this list because it starts so strong. The opening sequence actually works. We see Logan's childhood trauma, the moment his mutation awakens, and then a chilling montage of him and his brother fighting through multiple wars across decades. It's emotional, brutal, and packed with promise. For a brief moment, it feels like we're finally getting the deep, character-focused Wolverine story fans always wanted. That opening sets the bar high. This should have been a dark exploration of identity, violence, and immortality. Logan's pain, his exhaustion with endless conflict, and his struggle to hold on to his humanity are all right there, ready to be explored. And then the movie throws it away. Instead of diving into Logan's psychology, the film rushes into a messy plot filled with weak villains, rushed relationships, and effects that look unfinished even for their time. The emotional weight disappears, replaced by loud action and shallow exposition. By the end, you remember the opening and wish the rest of the movie had earned it. If this list made you rethink a movie you once defended, or reminded you of a film that completely let you down, you're not alone. Drop your biggest start strong, end weak movie in the comments. And if you enjoy deep dives like this, hit like, subscribe, and share, because we're just getting started.